Welcome to a special Rejected Religion podcast episode. I'm Stephanie Shea. Drs. Wouter Hanegraaff and Marco Pasi are joining me today to discuss the HHP Centre, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. Welcome to you both, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm happy to be here.
Most welcome. So the focus today is on the Center for the History of Hermetic Philosophy and Related Currents, otherwise known as the HHP Centre, which was founded in 1999. And Wouter, I'd like you to start off our conversation today. Would you give the background and context that led to the formation of the center, who founded it, the inspiration for it, and your role in the center?
Right. I'd be happy to do that because it's actually a very nice story. It began in 1997. Basically, out of the blue, a very wealthy person, a woman, business woman, Rosalie Boston, appeared out of nowhere and made it clear to some scholars, academics in the Netherlands, that, she had been interested in Hermetic philosophy for a very long time. Privately, she had studied philosophy at the University of Amsterdam, and she had been disappointed that there was no really systematic context for studying these kind of things. And, since she had the means of making that possible, she proposed to start a chair, an academic chair, for this field. And that was something unique, because nothing like that existed. It was not just a chair. She made it possible financially to create a position for a full professorship, for two assistant professorships, 2 PhDs, and a secretary, which was really spectacular. Nothing like that had happened in the humanities in the Netherlands ever. So it was a whole procedure, because it's not so easy. You have to organize this. So a foundation was created that received the money, so it was no longer her money, and then engaged in conversations with the university to start a new center, a new chair, and all that at the University of Amsterdam. And that's what happened. And to clarify something from the beginning, many people always think that because people know that there is some kind of financial donor behind the center, and people often think that this is the Bibliotheca Philosophica Hermetica, which was founded by Joost Ritman, and that's another millionaire, but it's a different institution. So, just to clarify for people who get confused, these are 2 different millionaires who both did something in Amsterdam related to Hermeticism. So that's what happened, and then this chair was advertised as it goes at the University of Amsterdam. I applied. There was a whole competition procedure as usual, and I was very happy and very, felt very blessed. How can I say it? That I received that job. So I became this full professor, and then it became possible for me to hire assistant professors and start the whole program, and that's what happened. I think that's basically the short version of the story of how the center started.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks for the clarification between the 2 wealthy individuals that are involved in Amsterdam. And also, yes, it's indeed a very, very, very nice story. Marco, you are the current director of the HHP Centre. Could you talk about your history with the center, when you became director, and what types of activities or work the center is focusing on currently?
I came to Amsterdam in 2004. I saw the foundation of the HHP Centre happening. At the time, I was doing a PhD in Paris with Antoine Fèvre, who was my supervisor and my mentor. And I went to Paris in 1995. So that's before the foundation of the center. And when the center was created, I was in Paris. I was doing my PhD. And I saw it happening, and I saw that Wouter, whom I already knew at the time, got the position. And then two assistant professors were appointed, one for the early modern period and one for the modern and contemporary period. And I thought to myself, oh no, I missed a chance. That was the moment where I should have been able to apply for the positions, because, these kind of opportunities don't happen so frequently. But at the time, I was unfinished with my PhD. And I finished a bit later. That was in 2004. And by that time, it was a pure stroke of luck. The person who was here as an assistant professor for the modern period, that was Olaf Hammer, he got an offer for another position, a full professorship in Denmark, and he decided to move on. He went away. And so the position became available again. And since I was just finished with my PhD at that moment, I was eligible. And so I applied and I got the position. So from Paris, I moved to Amsterdam. I spent 9 years in Paris, all in all. And now it's been 20 years in Amsterdam, which, if you think about it, it's a long period of time. So I have seen many things happening here in Amsterdam. We have moved also from one place to another, and probably we are going to move again in some time, because a new campus is being prepared now for the Faculty of Humanities. And I became the director of the center in 2019. Wouter had been the director of the center for 20 years then. That's actually the year when we celebrated the 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
And, Wouter wanted to focus more on his research, and it was clear that 20 years, it's actually long enough as a period with this kind of responsibility. So I think he wanted to have some more time for his own research. And so basically that position was offered to me, and I was asked whether I was interested, and I thought, okay, why not? I think it's a good opportunity for doing something good for the center. And so I became the new director of the center, which I still am. Now, what happened in the meanwhile is that the center became bigger. Originally, the center included the full professor, which has always been Wouter, and then two positions for assistant professors. So, as I said, originally this was a position for the early modern period and another position for the modern period. In 2020, if I am not mistaken, two new positions were created because Rosalie Basten, the person who made the existence of the center possible in the first place, decided that she wanted to make it bigger. She thought that it was a pity that we could study esotericism here only started from the early modern period, that it would have been good to broaden the perspective and to look also at earlier periods of time. And so he gave some more money to the foundation that supports us, and two new positions were created, one for antiquity and another for the Middle Ages. In the meanwhile, we have also taken in more PhD students, because apart from the permanent staff, the center always included also two PhD positions, and they're always there. So basically, when people are finished with their PhD projects, they move on and the positions become available again. So at the beginning, the group was relatively small, 5 people all in all, counting the permanent staff and the PhDs. And now we are actually a much bigger group. I think all in all, we are probably around 15 people. And that includes so the larger group of staff members. So now we are 5, the full professors and the 4 assistant or associate professors. and then more PhD students with us, without forgetting also the secretary, which is also part of our group. So when we have our staff meetings, it is nice to see that it's actually a more diverse and a larger group, with different perspectives, different ages, different backgrounds. So I think in this sense, the group has grown a lot.
Indeed, it has. So now I'd like to ask each of you if you would share what you think the added value of the center is. In other words, why do you think this center is important and needed?
Well, there are many ways of answering that question, Stephanie.
Sure.
My own take on it is that at the time when we started, and this is perhaps no longer the case in the same way as it was in 1999, but at that time, there was simply no way to study this kind of stuff in the academy on a structural basis anywhere. Right. And this is a point I'd like to emphasize a little bit because the academy has changed, the humanities have changed. Yeah. Nowadays, the younger generation of students, let's say when somebody wants to study, let's say, the Theosophical Society or some magical or occultist movements or and so on and so forth, then if you have a good proposal, then you can get a PhD position at many places actually in academia, in Europe or in America and so on. So it's no longer the taboo is no longer so big. But in 1999 there was a big taboo, and I remember this very clearly. In the 1990s, it was very difficult to get accepted and to be taken seriously when you were studying this kind of weird stuff. And so that was one of the missions that we had to change that perception of the field, to make clear this is a serious field that should be taken just as seriously as any other field. So my term for this has always been, esotericism is like the kind of wastebasket of rejected knowledge, of all the kind of stuff that the academy didn't used to take seriously. So I think our mission was to fill that gap, basically. And I think we have been filling that gap. But as I already suggested, I think we also have to realize that the situation is no longer the same as it was 25 years ago. Because nowadays it is easier for good, talented young scholars to do this also in other places. But nevertheless, our center remains the only one in the world that has a complete integrated program with a large staff. Well, 5 people is quite a large staff. Yeah. With a complete program. That's still unique. Yeah. That's the way I would answer your question.
Thank you. Marco, your opinions.
Yeah, it's clear that the HHP Centre has played a crucial role in the establishment of a new field of study, which is the study of esotericism. We could speculate about how the field would look like today if the center had never existed. When the center was created, there was only one chair for the study of esotericism. This was in Paris. This was the place where I was doing my PhD, and Antoine Fèvre was the professor there at the time. This was important, of course, because it means that esotericism was already recognized as a legitimate field of research somewhere in the world, in some academic institution. But I think this was not enough to create critical mass in order to make a whole field coagulate, so to speak. So I think in that sense, the creation of the center here in Amsterdam made it possible to have a whole situation where you could actually develop this and be also the headquarters for many things that were happening. For instance, the Arias Journal, the Arias book series. It sort of started from here. Not to forget about the dictionary of Gnosis and Western esotericism. So these were all things that were important at the time, which were sort of started from here, and then they took, of course, a life of their own. So at some point, they are not necessarily associated with the center here in Amsterdam, but they really played a crucial role in the formation of the field. Now, today we know that there are other places, as Wouter said, where you can study esotericism. There are other centers. There is a center in Copenhagen, for instance. There is a new center which has been created recently at Exeter. Another center existed in Exeter before, but it was discontinued at some point, and now we see that a new one is being created. So there are places, and then there are many, many scholars in different places around the world. So certainly this is something that now exists, is out there. I don't think that the field could have grown so quickly and so solidly without the existence of the Amsterdam Center.
I would agree with you on that point. So again, I'm asking you both to share your opinions. What has been, if you could only choose one thing, what has been, in your opinion, the most important achievement of the center in the past 25 years?
Well, you start about it.
Okay. Well, my idea is actually, Marco, you mentioned the Dictionary of Gnosis and Western Esotericism, which was published in 2005. It's standing right behind you, so people can see it on the screen. So those two blue volumes there. And I remember this very well. It was a lot of work. This happened not just during the first 5-6 years of the center, but also years before that, because this book was conceptualized in the mid-1990s, before the center even existed. And that was a lot of work. And I would highlight that because the point is, what we were trying to do at that moment with a whole group of scholars, not just HHP, but also a whole network, an emerging network in Europe and America, we wanted to establish standards of quality, standards of academic quality in studying this stuff. And I think that's, personally, I would say that may have been the most important point. We wanted to make clear it is not enough that you can study esotericism if you want here and there, but there must be standards of quality. The standards were not high enough, in my opinion, by the end of the 90s. There was a lot of wishy-washy kind of stuff floating around. And we wanted to say, okay, we put the bar high. We make very clear this is academic stuff. We strive for excellence. This is the bar. The bar is high. And that is, and we try to exemplify this, so to speak, by the dictionary as a kind of flagship for the field. So my number one answer would be establishing standards of quality.
Yeah, I would agree with Wouter. And honestly, I also tend to think that the dictionary was probably the most important achievement that we have had. Because it's also perhaps the most tangible one. It's the one that you can see that has stayed. Because we have done many things. We have done a lot of research. We have done a lot of teaching. And one could say perhaps another achievement is all the former students of HHP who are going around in the world, who have become scholars in their own right. They have taken sometimes prestigious positions in different universities around Europe and outside of Europe. So that's a very important achievement. But I think the dictionary deserves special mention. With hindsight, maybe it is easy today to see perhaps some limitations, some things that today you would do different. That's clear. All scholarly works have an expiry date, so to speak, and sometimes it's actually a very short one. In this case, I think most of the material that is in the dictionary is still valid and absolutely important. So you can find very important information there. I don't think that the dictionary should only be looked at with the eyes of today. Of course, it is important to be critical, and I see myself where it could be perhaps expanded, improved, and so on. But I think if one wanted to be fair and to appreciate also the value that it has had historically, I think it would be important to look at it with the eyes that existed then. So knowing what the situation was before this dictionary was published. And it's clear that it set a standard to which I think everybody looked at afterwards. So it remained as a kind of model for the research that was done in our field.
Going to the flip side now, what challenges have the center and its researchers faced in the past 25 years? And what are perhaps current challenges that might not have been an issue in the past?
Well, maybe I start this time. I think, interestingly enough, you talk about the flip side, and it's true. I think the challenge is also the blessing, in the sense that what we have seen in the past 25 years is the growth of the field itself. So the field has become much, much bigger, with so many more people who are interested in esotericism. They want to do research in the field. And they also want to make a career, a professional scholarly career in the field. And I think this is very good to see. It's actually what we wanted at the beginning. So we can be happy about that. And we know that we have contributed to this. We were not the only ones, of course. There were many other people who were part of this process. But certainly, we did play an important role as a center. Now, I think this also brings challenges, because the bigger a group becomes, also with changing times, changing perspectives, things that were not necessarily so important 25 years ago, all of a sudden they acquire a new importance. There are also changing sensitivities about certain issues. So I would say that the biggest challenge is to accommodate this growing diversity, which I think is something very good. As I said, it's a blessing in one way, but at the same time, it does pose challenges, not just to us as a center, but I would say to the whole community of the scholars of esotericism. So I think it is a good thing that there are more and more people representing different perspectives, also different backgrounds. I think the future of esotericism is also in having increasingly broader perspectives on what esotericism is and how it has evolved historically, and how we can look at it both as a subject and as a field in the future. So that's something that I think is probably a bit of a challenge, but it's a physiological challenge. I think you would find probably the same kind of challenge in similar fields. So fields that don't have a very long history, that are still, to a certain extent, in their childhood. If you think about it, the field is not very old after all. So I think these are what for a human being would be referred to as growth issues. Then a second thing, which is external, so that would be part of internal processes. Then there is the external challenge, which is the fact that the study of esotericism is obviously something that is part of the humanities. And I think that this is increasingly becoming difficult insofar as the humanities are being defunded a little bit everywhere, and are not considered to be as important as other disciplines, other areas of research and knowledge. So there is the idea that only applied sciences or hard sciences count because they produce some kind of economic return. For the humanities, obviously, this is more difficult. And I think that in this case, the study of esotericism is meeting the same kind of challenge that all the other fields in the humanities are meeting. And if we look at current political changes, I don't know that there are reasons to be very optimistic about the immediate future. We can hope perhaps for a better future, perhaps on a longer term. But for now, especially here in the Netherlands, it doesn't look very good.
Yeah. I totally agree with Marco. And I would make perhaps 2 additional remarks. I mean, here in the Netherlands, it's true. At this moment, we have a new far-right government, which we've never had before. And they've already announced budget cuts in the humanities, which are frightening, really, absolutely frightening. And so that's a big deal. From a broader perspective, I remember at one point over the past 20 years or so that I began to see these changes happening in the humanities. And at one point, I actually had a dream. I had a dream which sort of exemplified the situation. So the idea was that I've always felt that we were cultivating a beautiful garden with rare flowers that you couldn't find anywhere else, esotericism. It wasn't done anywhere else. We had this unique flower, and we had our own, we had our own irrigation because we had external money. So the garden was well watered and taken care of, and it was all beautiful. But at one point, I began to realize, hey, this garden is part of a bigger valley, and that valley is beginning to run dry. So we may be cultivating this garden here, but the broader surroundings are in trouble, financially, but not just financially, also in terms of culture, of what is considered important and what not. And I have to say, for me, this has been a difficult experience because when I began in 1999 here, I always had this idea, and for many years, that, okay, we are contributing something to culture, to the humanities, to history, to historical approaches, to the understanding of Western culture, whatever you want to define this. And this will be taken up by new generations, and there will be new generations, and it will continue. And at one point, I began to have the feeling, well, how many of those new generations will there be if the field is increasingly running dry? Is that actually going to happen? And that's, I have to say, has been a very, how should I say, and a kind of a depressing thought. And I don't want to be too optimistic, too pessimistic. I mean, I want to be optimistic, not too pessimistic. Excuse me. But we also have to be realistic. These things are changing, are happening. One additional point I'd like to make is also, at least when we started, we always saw esotericism as a multidisciplinary field. You could approach this from many approaches, but we approach it primarily from an historical point of view, like you are given attention to a whole range of historical currents from antiquity to the present that have been not taken seriously enough, and that have to be given more attention. And what you see in the humanities happening also, in part from the funding crisis, is a decline of interest in history and the importance of history. And you see this everywhere on all levels of education. And increasingly, what I see with many colleagues also and with many students is that people are increasingly focused on contemporary issues, contemporary relevance, things that are relevant, etc. And the point of history, why study history, is not always so clear anymore as it used to be. Well, in my opinion, and I've used this metaphor many times, losing your sense of history is like losing your memory. If I get an accident tomorrow and I lose my memory, I no longer remember my life, my previous life, then I will be completely disoriented. I will not be able to move forward in a responsible manner in my life because I lose my memory. And I think this is the same for the humanities and for culture as a whole. If we lose our memory, our cultural memory, our historical memory of where we've come from and how we have developed and how we ended up here, we will have the same sense of disorientation and will not be able to make responsible choices about how to move forward. I feel strongly about this, and I think that this is a point that is severely neglected at this moment. This is why we need history. Not because things long ago, dusty stuff that why bother about it anymore. No, it's part of who we are. And if we want to understand who we are and where we come from, we must know about it. And we must also not just know about it, we must also be able to continually revise it and reconsider it. Because that's the point about esotericism. You have all this whole history of, well, I use the term Western culture again. It's one of the controversial topics right now. And I think that we have to revise, to radically revise our, traditional views of Western culture in all kinds of ways, including by looking at everything that we've neglected in the West. And I think so a lot of the criticism that you now have for very understandable and legitimate reasons, a lot of criticism of the West is basically a criticism of a very narrow understanding of the West. So if you include all the kind of stuff that has been neglected and rejected, our whole story of where we come from and how we ended up here will change radically. And this will also open up new possible perspectives on the future. So for all these reasons, I think it's important. It's important that we are aware of history, and it's important that we are aware of all those things that have been, written out of history. We have to write them back in. Also for very urgent, current social reasons, not just for historical reasons in themselves. So that would be a bit long answer to your short question.
I'm glad you brought that up, though, because that is something that during my years of study, that made a huge impression on me about how esotericism actually has this very important role in history and has been largely forgotten. And when you put that piece of the puzzle back into the picture, then you get such a deeper understanding. And I won't go on and on because you've already said it. Marco, is there anything else you'd like to add to this?
Well, I just wanted to say that the HHP Centre could not have done what it has done without all the fantastic people who have been here over the years. And they are really important scholars. So I just wanted to mention their names because I think it's important. Before I came here to Amsterdam, there were Jean-Pierre Braque and Olaf Hammer. And when I came, there was Corpo von Stuckrad, who was there for the early modern period. And then when Corpo von Stuckrad moved on, Peter Forschel was hired. So now he's still with us, working on early modern material. And then more recently, with the creation of the two new assistant professorships, then two new colleagues joined us. So we have Dylan Burns and Layana Saif, respectively working on antiquity and the Middle Ages. I cannot mention all the PhD students we have had in the past. Some of them, as I said, have become colleagues in the meanwhile, getting positions in various universities. But yeah, at least I wanted to mention the colleagues with whom we have worked over the years. Whatever we have achieved, it was teamwork that we have done together. And I think it's important to mention that.
Right. Indeed. So in closing, concerning the future of the HHP Centre, what are the plans or goals for the coming years?
Marco.
Well, good question. Good question. We have had an important change recently with the addition of these two new positions. That really changed us in a way, and so we are bigger now, and I would like to think we are stronger also. I think that for the future, it's not a matter of becoming even bigger, right? Because I think we are big enough at the moment. I think for the future, what I think would be important is to strengthen all the collaboration that we have with different institutions. In recent years, we have worked with the Cini Foundation in Venice, with the Warburg Institute in London, with the Harvard Divinity School. So we have close relations with a number of research centers, which I think are really important, because I think in some cases they help us not to stay all the time in our bubble, which is the bubble of the study of esotericism. When we talk with partners who are not necessarily part of the network of esotericism, but also work on different areas that are related, close enough to what we do, but not necessarily the same thing. I think this is something that is good for us, and I think more generally, it's good for the study of esotericism. Apart from that, my wish and my hope is that the HHP Centre will continue to play that role in the community for the study of esotericism, which I think should be a role of example, of quality in both research and teaching. So we would like to keep on training the scholars of the future for the study of esotericism. Yeah, I think these are the most important things I see for the future of HHP for now.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I would add one more thing that I've found increasingly important over the past couple of years. And that is also reaching out beyond the academy. I think it's important to do this for several reasons. We have been building up this field, and that's, of course, at first you concentrate all your energies on building up the field, with your colleagues, with your students, etc. I think we've accomplished that, but I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what this field is all about and why it's relevant among the wider public. And I think we must invest more on reaching out towards wider audiences, maybe by things like this, like videos on YouTube, lectures, those kind of things, and to make clear what we're doing, why we are doing it, why it is interesting, why it is, and also to so not just because we have something to offer that is not only interesting for strict academics, but also more widely interesting, but also for very practical reasons, because, as we already said, the humanities are in trouble. And if the humanities are in trouble, we are in trouble. So we need to make clear what we're doing, what we're all about, why it is relevant. And I see again and again that when you tell the story to general audiences, people who are not academics, people love it. People are inspired. People feel inspired. They want to know more about it. And it's important to build up support, to build up social support for this field, even beyond the academy. And I think we can probably do much more, in this regard to the future.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Very good point.
Yes, yes, totally agree. And I try in my own small way to take it outside of the academy and bring it to the mainstream. And I know that there are many other people who are also doing that as well. And I think that's really a wonderful addition to the scholarly work that's being done, that the scholars get an opportunity to talk about it. So I think that's great, so that more and more people can learn about what's going on in this field. So thank you both so much, gentlemen, for talking with me today about this important milestone and for sharing your thoughts and ideas about your work with the center. I'd like to wish you both much success in the future with your work.
Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. It was a pleasure.
Mine too.
Okay.